this link if you may jump in. Okay. Text me at Onimo if you're able to participate, and I'll keep talking about it. Okay, I want to introduce our host tonight, which is, well, first of all, we welcome you to Forum for the Coalition for Special Education Equity and AISD and VELA. I want to quickly introduce Maria Hernandez. VELA is a partner of CSEE. Maria is a rock star, and I want to make sure that everyone here sends families who have kids with special needs, disabilities to VELA. And money. They provide training to parents and how to advocate for their kids. They provide training to parents on self-care, and they do recreational activities, and they do some educational support for parents trying to navigate their IEPs. They are amazing. They're housed at the Old Allen, which is Anita Coy, right? Yep. And they are rock stars. So please send everybody their way. I just want to add that Maria saw what was broken as a speech therapist. She worked as a bilingual speech therapist in the district, saw what was not happening for parents. And this is true for bilingual, it's true for SPED, but it's really true for bilingual SPED. And so she realized that she had to create spaces for Spanish-speaking parents in particular who weren't able to access services because they didn't know how to effectively advocate with this group of kind of people in, with power. So we're here to advocate on behalf of our students with disabilities in this district. It's a significant portion of this district. This is really, really important stuff. We need to educate everybody in this district. And there's some groups who've been failing, and that's bilingual learners and students who have disabilities. And we've got to do better. And so we want you to help us in that effort. So Maria, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, all of you, for letting us be a part.
The chair. No. I'll get your real chair.
I'm gonna fall off the chair. That is great. And just have her walk around.
There you go.
Okay. There it is. Like, all hail. I like it. Okay.
La reina.
La reina. Okay. So I would say welcome, but you've already been here. So welcome again. Hopefully you've moved on now to savory food. Lisa's gonna be our DJ for the night.
I don't even know.
I'm so sorry. But yeah, thank you for what you've already shared. I think, like Deb said, there's so much intersectionality here around our bilingual learners or English language learners and special education. And so we really wanted to come together and host this opportunity for you all to share your perspectives, to ask questions about special education. And so we're coming together as VELA and CSEE, or the Coalition for Special Education and Equity in Austin. Deb's already told you a little bit about VELA. Absolutely send any and all families that you're working with or that you know to connect with our services. We do courses and wraparound services to really support parents in navigating the special education journey, because it is confusing, it is complex, and families don't know what they're signing, let alone how to walk into a room and really advocate for what their child needs and deserves through special education. Everything that we do is free of charge in Spanish or English, and we partner quite a lot with AISD. And then we also are here with the Coalition for Special Education Equity in Austin, or CSEE, if you're not familiar with them. VELA is a community partner with them. They are a coalition of parents, educators, and other community partners that are working to improve the educational experience for families of children with disabilities in Austin. They advocate for many things, including inclusive practices, staff retention, bilingual integration, and open and transparent communication. So you've done many of these by now. You literally just did one 5 minutes ago, and you're just rolling into the next one. But we really believe that this forum is so important because students served by special education represent, it varies depending on the year, but roughly about 12% of the population of AISD students. So that's students with an IEP, right? And then we've got all of those folks that are in the queue in the evaluation process. And then we've got all those other folks that have a 504 plan and aren't necessarily in special education, but are also diverse learners, right? So it's a huge chunk of the population in the district, which is why we want to talk about that tonight. those students, even though they serve such a big part of the population, are typically the most underserved, right, by the district. I think we can all agree on that. And so before we move into statements and questions, we wanted to share with you all a little bit about what we see as the most urgent needs. And some of this will overlap a little bit with what you've seen in the Stetson report for sure. So one of the big ones, which you've definitely heard about, is a lack of a district-wide inclusion model, right? So, and it's so interesting hearing so much about dual language and bilingualism, how things vary depending on what campus you're in, right? You have the same experience when it comes to special education, right? There's not a district-wide inclusion model that really focuses on ensuring that students are getting the most access to general education, even though federal law is saying, hey, these students need to be in the least restrictive environments to learn, right? So that is something that has been missing for a really long time. We've been advocating for that for a very long time. So what ends up happening is this campus by campus approach, which is what we have now, which is the availability, the ambitiousness of services and supports for a student totally depends on what campus you're in at that time. So we're asking that AISD elevate special education experts in its administrative hierarchy so we can have a district-wide approach instead of a roll the dice and depends where you are at the time that you're in. The third issue is staff loss, which we've talked about quite a bit and impacts not just special ed, but I think one of the biggest things we're seeing now is this intersection of bilingual special education staff being our greatest gap in services right now, prevalent through this fall, and what that does in terms of detrimental consequences for students. Fourth issue around special ed, which I think is a huge one, is a compliance focus. That's our perspective in special ed, is minimal standards, right? Is just meet the basic requirements, and even we struggle to do that. And so what that means is we spend a large amount of public funds on lawyers who have made their reputations on opposing services or supports for students with disabilities instead of striving to build relationships and resolve differences to provide better outcomes for students. There's a lot of issues, y'all. I got two more, okay? Transactional and minimal parent engagement, right? And I know this one firsthand because we do parent engagement with the district quite a bit, and we've hosted a million workshops, and I will tell you over and over again how often nobody shows up. And that has nothing to do with parents not wanting to be engaged. It has to do with parents not knowing that these workshops exist, right? Or that they're made available to them. So we're still stuck in this, well, we created a flyer and the flyer was available and nobody came to the party, right? Exactly. Or the flyer was given the day after the workshop happened, right? But the parents somehow should have found that out, right? And this is especially problematic for our English language learner families. So we have, again, that intersection of disproportionality for that population. Timely planning and communication. So the needs of students accessing special ed are often considered last. Very often we're just talking about dual language being like, this little side house instead of the basis, right? The same thing with special education. We're planning for gen ed students and then special education students later instead of special education students first. And then, oh, guess what? That improves outcomes for everybody, right? So, and the communication of that being so lagged. And then finally, and definitely not last, is disproportionality and disciplining. So AISD has a history of disproportionately disciplining students with disabilities, especially students with disabilities of color. So those are issues that we have been talking about, we've been bringing up over the years, and we wanted to bring that as kind of the key to this platform as we shift now into asking questions and giving you all the opportunity to share your introductory statements. We definitely want to thank you all, those that have had a chance to do your written commitments. If you haven't had a chance to do that, please, we look forward to receiving those so that we know that we can count on you as trustees to represent the best outcomes for special education students. Okay, so now we're going to move into questions. Does anyone want to do the timer?
Yeah, we have a timer. Shelley, you want to do it again, or somebody else?
Yeah, you
Charlotte, Lisa was going to do it.
I can do it.
Oh, great.
I can keep time.
Okay.
I actually.
No, Lisa's got it.
Oh, I know, but you're so involved with SPED, you might want to just give. Oh, that's nice of you.
Shelley, do it. You're good. Go.
Okay, one
Shelley's
second.
on it. Go.
Okay, wonderful.
And maybe
you
let's
got
give
it
them
now.
1.5. Let's go down to 1.5 on time.
So
1.5.
I
Boom,
care about
go.
sped, but I'm not a sped mom.
Okay.
I don't think.
Okay, so you already know how the timer works, that's how we're gonna do it. For this first one, we're just gonna do an introductory statement, so similar to what y'all did, but we're giving you 1 minute, so we've got the time. But really what we wanna know is for you to provide an introductory statement about your knowledge and experience around special education and how you will represent students with disabilities and those accessing special education services. And you'll have 1 minute to share. And we'll go ahead and start with, and I'll just call on you and I'll switch the order up just to keep us on our toes. And so I'll go ahead and start with District 1. And Roxanne, would you like to get us started?
I certainly will. My name is Roxanne Evans, and I'm a District 1 candidate for the AISD board. And my knowledge of special ed is growing because it's something that I'm interested in. I had a baptism by fire, so to speak, my introduction to special ed and AISD when my then 7-year-old child walked in front of a car and was hit. He was in a coma for a week. He was in ICU for 2 additional weeks. And my husband dropped out of law school to get him back in terms of he had to learn to read and do math. When he went back to school, 2nd grade, we realized we might need services for him. We didn't know what we would need. So, with the 2.5 degrees between us and a lot of privilege, it was very frightening to be in that situation. And so I really have empathy for special ed parents because I know how difficult the system is for anyone. But if you want to see a helicopter parent, you get a parent who's got, differing abilities and needing extra services. So my goal would be to have parents have good communication and access to everything they need when they're in a situation that I was in back then.
Candace?
Okay, my name is Candace Hunter, and I'm a candidate for Austin ISD School Board Trustee District 1, and you basically spoke my story. So I'll go real quick. My son, who is currently 19, got his first job yesterday all on his own, from beginning to end. I did nothing but driving to the interview. I'm so very proud of him. Was diagnosed with actually Asperger's before the DSM-5 changed, ADHD, other health impairment, depression. He was going to be sent to ACES when he was in the 2nd grade. We no longer have ACES, thank God. I put my foot down as a teacher for Austin ISD and said, I don't know if children watching BS, that's not gonna happen to my kid. We moved schools, and he was then tested. We had kind of a whirlwind, because I think they know they kind of messed up. So we had a whirlwind experience. In August, he was tested. By January, he was admitted under those diagnoses. And then we began middle school and the fight for scores. And I was told as a parent, you can't decide where your kid goes if we have a scores program. And so again, like I told you before, I'm running so that there's a parent coming behind me that will not have to do the same thing or do what I did as a public school teacher, pull my kid and go to a charter school, which by the way, their grass is not greener. Let me just tell you, because then they don't have there's not as many livers. So, but that's basically my experience with special education. I'm still dealing with it. Thank God ACC has a much better program to walk kids through, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
My name is Catherine Whitley Chu, and I'm running for Austin ISD Board of Trustees District 4. My experience with special education is as a general education teacher. I had a really amazing experience as an inclusion teacher. So I was a general education class, and all my classes were inclusion classes. My 2nd year teaching with an amazing experienced special education teacher, Kevin Anderson, who's still at Gus Garcia Young Men's Leaders Academy. So I have great experience with an inclusion model that like me and him made work, and that was really, really good. We didn't have like a model to look at. We just did it and created it, and it was wonderful. So my other experience is more recent with my 5-year-old. I referred her for testing last October, so October 2021. Her ARD was completed in August 2022. So when we're talking about basic compliance as the goal, we're not even meeting those goals. And, driving her across town, finally getting her tested, I was just thinking, I'm like, if me as a person with a lot of knowledge and privilege is having this much, and a person who has a loud mouth is having this much difficulty with the system, then what is happening for other kids and families? And this is unacceptable to me.
Okay, District 6, Andrew will start with you.
So I'll talk about personally, professionally, and then recently. So personally, like I said, my father is someone who lives with dyslexia. He dropped out of AISD when he was a sophomore. He was supposed to graduate bicentennial in 1976, but he did not because whatever supports disillusionment he felt led him to leave the classroom. My sister also has, she has 5 boys, so great for her, but she, one of them is on the spectrum, and she was so dissatisfied with her experience in the AISD that she withdrew him, and he's now a senior this year at Hayes High School in Hayes CISD. Professionally, I spent my first 2 years in AISD full-time employee in a life skills classroom, and then I taught inclusion social studies every year after that, so partnering with someone who was a certified special ed teacher was just my life in the ISD. And then recently, since I've started campaigning this year, I've attended 3 different ARDs with different families that have invited me to see in different parts of town what that experience looked like. I've also gone with a family who toured a charter school that was considering leaving the district to see what were the reasons why and what were the alternative structures at that charter school. It's not like a big brand, like KIP or IDEA. It's kind of a one-off singular, but yeah, so that's been my connection to special education.
And Jeronimo, I don't know if you can hear us.
Hi, Jeronimo Rodriguez. I serve as the current trustee in District 6. I've had a couple of different experiences with special education supporting the Greenleaf School here. I think one of the things that I've learned is that when you meet one child with special education, you've met one child with special education. I also helped co-found Project Search here in the state of Texas, which is the best practice for hiring young adults with developmental and cognitive disabilities. Over the last 15 years, we've had over 250 young adults from 5 Central Texas school districts, including AISD, and 10 community organizations that had a 91% employment outcome for those young adults with developmental cognitive disabilities in our community. So, and what I continue to learn is that I'm still learning about special education, and happy to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this. So a few things come to mind. My role with special education is mostly as an advocate. Shout out to Lisa, because you're kind of my go-to person anytime this is kind of and Deb.
And Deb.
But Lisa was first. So.
Right here.
Just
Just say it.
But and I really appreciate that, because I think, some people don't like it when trustees reach out to the community, but I'm like, I can't be a subject matter expert on everything. Like, I gotta reach out. I'm gonna get your number and add you to my list.
Absolutely.
So anyway, but so as an advocate, here are some of the things that I've done and will continue to do. One is get a special ed metric on our scorecard. It's not the best metric ever, but it's a start, and we're at least now we're looking at the data. And the main thing that y'all, I'm sure know, and the main thing I noticed, there's a huge difference between our special ed kid and outcomes between our SPED kids who are economically disadvantaged and those who aren't, which to me is a clear indication that some parents know how to navigate the system better and some don't. So the stuff you said about advocacy and all that like really resonates. And I wonder if our district can start actually hiring staff that are advocates. I don't know if that exists, but is it really, that's a different conversation, but I would love to kind of explore that. Another thing is this essential areas redesign. Some people really love it, and that's great, and they should keep doing it. Some don't. We should really hold off and see what's happening, because it's going to have the most impact on our SPED kids. And there's a whole lot more. I will just give a shout out. So the work I do is with National Science Foundation, and I'm putting SPED into all of my grants, and it's like a new thing for every client I work with, because we don't think about SPED when we think about underrepresented minorities. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We're excited. We clap, okay? Yeah. Okay, so in the spring of this year, the results of the long-awaited Stetson report were shared publicly. This third-party assessment conducted by Stetson and Associates identified challenge areas and made recommendations for improvement within AISD special ed services. This has been publicly shared. The report was shared with you. We're going to move into 2 minutes as the answer for this question. And what we would like to know is from that report and the recommendations, what is one area that stood out to you the most? And maybe potentially if you have an idea on how you would like to address or respond to that challenge area or gap that resonated for you in the Stetson. And we're going to switch up the order and we're going to start with District 6. So we're going to start with you.
Okay, cool. So one of the things that stuck out to me, well, obviously there are a lot of issues, but one of the positives that I saw in the report was the feedback from teachers, that attitudinally teachers want to do a better job. They want to provide tier 1 instruction that is accessible to all the students that are in their room. But what they don't have is a structure that guides them towards that. And so I identify with that as someone who was recently in the classroom, because what it does come down to is like individuals on different campuses that have experience or that have, the credentials, the knowledge, and then it's very insulated. I taught at Travis and I taught at Lively, and I would tell people that you could take a potato gun and shoot from the top of Waldorf, you could hit that potato on Lively's campus. But if you go into those two campuses, you'll find really different structures for dealing with special education, despite the fact that they're like a mile away from each other or less, So I think that one of the priorities that we need to have as a district in addressing this is building consistency across campuses. It's not, there is a place for local control and giving principals and campuses some autonomy, but we're not at a point where we even have nuts and bolts things taken care of. The way that IEPs were communicated to me as a teacher at the beginning of the year was different on those two campuses, and that should not be the case, especially in 2022.
Geronimo?
Yeah, I think there was two things for me, and I'll do these real quickly. One of them was the capacity building piece about the systemic delivery of services, and it goes, I think, to the equity across the board of fidelity to special education. And I think the other one that also struck me, and I think I've heard more and more, is not just the family and community member engagement. It said about how it was essential, but what I underlined on the report was their satisfaction with services provided their children is a critical metric for school leaders. And I think that's really important. And that's something I think that we struggle with, trying to measure what it is that, what is community engagement. And I think this really points out to the fact that why don't you ask the parents what it is? And I think that's so important. So those two things for me are like systemic kind of view of special education. And then I think the last thing I'll just mention is, and I'm really excited that we are deep diving in the budget around special education, just like we're doing that with bilingual education and mental health services, because I think those are the areas that we need to prioritize and go deeply and commit the funds to actually do these things like systems and making sure that our families are satisfied with the services that they're getting.
Gosh, I agree with everything y'all said. I think to me, I know I've already talked about staffing, but like without staffing, we're not going to ever have the implementation fidelity. Lisa, you taught me about the universal design for learning. That was one of our first conversations, and that was so profound because it really does address the whole child in a general ed setting. But like if we don't have highly qualified staff to do that, we're never going to get there. So to me, it's like you got to have the nuts and bolts in place, and that's the people. And I'll relate this to some recent advocacy that we did on the board. The administration, in order to help meet the staffing shortage, had proposed that we eliminate the requirement for our teachers, our elementary teachers, to be certified or to even be enrolled in an alternative certification program, which was super short-sighted. And I actually was thinking about, how's Lisa going to react to that?
We can't do it.
We can't do it. It's like it would be impossible, right? Because you think about, I mean, our certified teachers barely have the knowledge and skills they need to do this. How would somebody with like, you know, I don't know, a philosophy major be able to do it? Like, I don't know. And so we really advocated strongly, and we ended up getting a unanimous vote to strike that, and we are still requiring it. So I think that's the role of the trustee, is you're always, even if you're not talking about SPED, you still need to think about SPED. You know, you still need to think about, that's like the definition of equity. It's a lens, it's not a standalone thing. And I think that a lot of us up here like share that, and we just got to keep doing that.
Okay, over to you, Candace.
Okay, you know what? I have a question about the Stetson report. Not really. I'm not thinking. So we talked to parents. Which parents?
And how many? 'Cause
How
there were
many
very
parents?
few.
Oh yeah. And so it's those, and I get that the pandemic broke the report. I get that you know, we were kind of shuttered, and so we had to take a pause and that sort of thing. But still, I don't think that you can use something as a metric, right? If it's not, and I'm not doubting her methodology. I'm saying for me, John Q. Public, that's not enough, right? So talking to those parents, because if you look, when we start looking at special education and we start looking at students who are low SES, oh, wait a minute, do those cross over? Are they, oh, look, it's the same group of kids, you know, not all the time, but a lot. And so they're underserved, not once, but twice by the district. And that was kind of my threat to schools all the time, is that like, you better make sure my kid gets what he needs, because he's gonna sink you in 2 cells. He's Black and he's economically disadvantaged, so you better make sure he gets what he needs. Of course, I don't know how this works. But that's the one thing that about the Stetson report, is that I know, because sometimes in my language, I just recently started realizing I use military language when I discuss the school district. Boots on the ground, front line. That's not, but that's how I feel sometimes, right? But it's a partnership, right? And here, lest we forget, you're supposed to be in service to the community. You work for me. Why am I begging you for everything? So when it comes to things like the Stetson report and what I want to see done again, should there be like one that's not broken and it's done again? Like, I want to see you pulling those parents. I want to see you talking in depth with those parents, even parents who are bilingual, getting it translated so that you can understand what it is, right? And so it's those are the things that for me, that's what's gonna make the difference for me.
I don't need a timer.
Good to see you.
Okay. One of the things that stood out for me in the Stetson report was what it said about leadership. We already know that, you know, SPED is siloed, but what concerns me is all the disconnects between different levels of leadership in the district. You know, at the campus level, at the academic level, at the superintendent level. And so that lack of leadership and those disconnects is why the report referenced the lack of clarity, lack of vision. And so, you know, that's something that needs to be fixed. That's something that the trustees can demand that the next superintendent or even the interim superintendent work on, because it does not serve parents well. Parents struggle enough to get what they need for their students in SPED. The lack of communication, the lack of resources, and just the general barriers, frankly, that the district puts up. So if you have these communication channels that, you know, sometimes they go up to the right floor, sometimes they're derailed. It just compounds all the problems that are so embedded in the system, and then make the system just heartbreakingly difficult for parents.
Okay. So what stood out the most to me was talking about like what ideal instruction looked like. And what excited me about that was, oh, that's what me and Kevin Anderson did. But we came up with, no one told us to do that, and we weren't trained to do it. It was based on like our instinct and trial and error, and it's what we came up with, doing flexible grouping. We didn't do any whole group direct teach, and I've carried that through my whole teaching degree for any classes that I'm teaching. And just, I'm like, wow, what if we had a training in that, where I took issue with the report was saying like, well, actually it was like they were almost calling us overstep because we're above average. What'd you say? That was before Exodus, right? Okay, yeah, but that does, and so there's the reason they're saying we're overstaffed is because we're above average, but that doesn't mean that average or what the TA minimum is what is correct and what's right. So I definitely take issue with that. Like the reason that me and Kevin were able to do that is because we had a lot of resources. We actually had Sylvan tutors who weren't like super trained individuals, but we were really good at training people. So we could get them to do a really good job with students. And we also had something there's called a reach mentor, because I was a brand new teacher. And so this person was responsible for helping. So it was a veteran, amazing teacher, not an administrator, not an evaluator, who's like, what can I do for you? And also knew what she could do for me to help me. So who helped us plan. And even still with all these things, like I worked till like 11 p.m. I worked 7 days a week. I didn't have little kids at the time. I was in my 20s. I had a lot of energy. I'd eat like one fast food meal a day. So I had high cholesterol. Like, so, you know, I disagree with that. We could do this, but we don't even need resources for it. Disagree.
Thank you. Okay, so our third question is really maybe thinking about what you've already answered when you said, told us a little bit about yourselves and what's really your story, your introduction around special ed, professionally, personally. Then we asked you about Stetson, what really stood out for you. So the third question is, what's the most important thing that you specifically want to bring as a trustee to improve educational outcomes for students with disabilities? So what's your one thing that really bubbles up for you as your primary focus in this role? And we will start with you, Catherine.
Okay. So like what I really, really noticed when I'm watching trustee meetings or if I'm in one, when the special education department is presenting about special education, I felt physical pain in my heart. And it's just, there's, you know, there was like a PowerPoint and there was like a stack of rocks and they're like, we're moving big rocks. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And like, we have to dig through like what's really, really, really happening. Like these are real people. There are thousands of kids and families, and what's happening to them and how are we serving them? There's not going to be any one number or like piece of data or like top level thing that we can, that's going to be enough for the board of trustees to know what's going on.
I think we'll go to you.
Okay. I'll say I already agree with what everyone's gonna say because I'm sure I will. But one thing that I'm not sure that I want to just bring up is the importance of legislative advocacy in all of this. And I serve on the legislative advocacy committee. We not only have to legislate at the state level, but nationally because IDEA is not fully funded, and we are taking a huge hit on that. And I don't know why it's not fully funded and no one's like up in arms about. I mean, I'm sure people are, but we in Austin have not really made that a priority. And so that's one of my goals is to really focus on this federal compliance and fully funding IDEA as part of our legislative advocacy work so that we can do all the things that they're about to tell you.
Okay, we'll go to District 6, Andrew.
So I would love, thinking about all of the different issues that are in the Stetson report and the timing of it and when it was released has already been brought up here, but and how it was disrupted by COVID. I just really feel like when it was published, the district should have done much more this summer to establish that vision and to put the pieces in place. Because once the school year starts rolling, it is like, it's too late, like it's done. Like what didn't happen is already, the train has left the station, So going forward, what I would love to see before the summertime, so it's available for teachers to access it during this springtime, is a coalition of parents, of administrators, from the Office of School Leadership, from academics, from human capital, to come together and to re-envision, because based on what I read in the Stetson report, it seems like the entire thing, saying like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I don't think there's any baby in this bathwater. I think it just entirely overhauled. Sorry. That's what it was.
Jeronimo?
Yeah, I'm probably going to say agree with everyone who who has yet to speak and the ones that have spoken. I think the one thing that I can do as a trustee is really on the deep dive on the budget and asking the question of what is it that our parents need? What is the system that we need to break in order to make it give us the outcomes that we want? I think that's going to be the challenge, is bringing everyone together to co-create that environment that we all want for our kids. I think that's going to be the challenge, and what we're going to be called to do as trustees, and work with our other trustees, because as you know, it takes 5 votes to get anything done. So working collaboratively with our other colleagues is going to be important.
Thank you. Okay, Roxanne, we'll go to you.
Special education is not a place. It's an array of services for students with different abilities who have the greatest need in the district. But like Catherine touched on, when we sit and we hear the discussions about special ed and the presentations, there's such a lack of humanity about what they're talking about. And it's very difficult to watch. My heart hurts too. And so what I would want to do on the board is to have the people who are doing the presentations, the administrators, and others feel a deeper connection to the students they serve. There seems to be this huge gap between the administration and the students, particularly in special ed. It plays out more in special ed because of the need of the students. So that would be one thing. Data is great, but I want to know at the end of the day how our most vulnerable students are being served by this district.
These ladies have such a good heart, because when I watch that, I'm mad as hell. And it's a good thing I'm at home, because I'm shouting at the kids, like, what are you doing? I'm just watching the board meeting. That's pretty much it. The one thing I'd like to see as a trustee coming forth is the one thing that I try to do every day, and that is build capacity in parents, right? That's why I wake up at 7 o'clock and start saying, this is what happened at the board meeting. They said this, but this is what it really means. Just watching the Stetson report, she was so kind. So kind, even when she was kind of like, well, it's not done, but you're doing such a great job. Nah, man, what we need to hear is you're messing up. These are people, kids, they're not widgets. And I understand that she's being paid, she can't do that. But a trustee is voluntary. But that's one of the things I really want to see is building capacity in parents. I want you to go to work one day and be like, why is it so quiet?
Yes.
Why is there nobody
out of
here?
business.
That's what I want to do,
Back
is
to
put you out of business. You know I love
I'm ready.
We've done some stuff together, but that's what I want to see. Why, I mean, I said this in my interview on Go Behind the Ballot, is there's too much money to be made in a broken system.
By the lawyer.
Time.
By everybody, but not our kids, right? So I really, that's the thing I want to see, is I want to build capacity. I want to encourage that. I want the district, again, that we don't have that combative language. They're like, oh, you're a parent, how can I serve you? What can I do to make sure you're getting what you need?
Okay, y'all. Now you get to ask some questions. We've got real short, yeah, okay. We've got so many knowledgeable folks here that can answer a question that you have, something that you want to learn more about, similar to what we did just around bilingualism and dual language. So you get the chance to ask questions so that you can learn, maybe gain a perspective. And so we can go, we'll just do, we'll do down the line, right?
Let's take them all, and then
And
it is
we'll hear
6:57,
Yeah.
so we're supposed to be out of here by 7. I think we can probably stay a little bit later, but what we might do is just take
Yeah.
everybody's questions, and then we might be able to grab some of those and afterwards get back with you, like individually, like Charlotte will take one and work on it. I'll take one, Lisa will take one. We'll split up and take some stuff to get back with you on your question.
Could you just create a
But we can do a
document?
little bit. Yeah, we'll do it together. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and start. with
Can somebody
Catherine.
take really good notes on the questions?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
Maria.
would love a field trip to a school that is doing inclusion well.
Mm.
I want to see what that looks like.
We would too.
In this
We would too. Take us there.
Actually, there's
Okay.
one district in Texas.
Roxanne?
I would like to know what trustees can do to help advocates find out how much money AISD spends on attorney fees. That is a pet peeve of mine, and I'll talk offline about it, but that is what I want to know.
At PIR, we'll travel.
But I want to know what like an ideal like perfect world school would look like for including all kids, so that we can have our goals here and not at legal compliance.
I guess I really want to know is how we get the word out. Like all of us in this room, and of course we're on the Facebook and all that stuff talking about this all the time. How do we get those parents who are on their knees crying somewhere or deciding and saying, you know what, I'm done, I'm voting with my feet, I'm out of here. How do we get the word to them? How do we do that?
I really kind of like Arthi and Catherine's question, because I think about that, I thought about that a lot. Where is there in the country a school that is working towards this and that's making good headway? Not even getting to where is there a district that is as linguistically, economically diverse as ours is that's getting towards that, but is there anyone anywhere that's that's close, that's at least a large suburban whatever school district? And I would love to, like Arthi said, go and visit that place. So where, have you heard of one? Is there a good model that we can study so we can build or maneuver AISD towards that?
Geronimo?
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with Andrew and with a lot of the folks. Like, what is the ideal program? Where can we go see that best practice? Because I think about it, I mean, even this week we announced that we're gonna be the first school district to have all electric school buses. Well, why can't we be the first school district or the school district with the best practice or model in special education and what that means, and investing those dollars? So, and I would also say it's probably the same one I asked in bilingual ed is, what do you need from us as a trustee? Because I think that's an important question as well, both our governance role, but also this kind of like, how do we together advocate for what that ideal is for our students?
Okay, since we're short on time, I wanted to say a couple of things real quick. One is 2 years ago, after we had a forum, we then in the fall did a training on special education, 2 hour, and I think we're open and we would like to do that again. And I think that will be a deep dive on a lot of the stuff. And so we would invite you and encourage you all to be part of that again. So I think that would be a helpful thing that we can do in the future. I think we can work on these questions and get responses back to you. But because we are here, I wondered if some of us who like Christina works in special education for the district, I wondered if we might like 30 seconds or to a minute, all give a chance to share something to your questions back. So keeping it super brief, but just something we really want you to hear since you took the time to come and we got sped parents. Tara doesn't want to go first. Tara, I think, is that too much to put you on the spot first? Yeah. Go this way. Okay, we'll come back. We'll come down this way. Charlotte.
Okay. To see a model of what's working in inclusion. I can't point to a school, but I have 3 children that are being served by SPED, all 3 of mine. And I can say there's groups of teachers that are making things work in a broken system, and they give me hope. And without them, I don't know that I'd be in this district. So I could point to teachers that are working beyond the limitations that they're given every single day to make the system work for my kid. And I can point you to those teachers. I know a lot of them.
Cool. We'll do that. We will do that.
I guess I'm confused as to, we can visualize bilingual programs, or we can visualize how a classroom should be for non-stable students. So why do we have to see it in action to be able to dream it for our district? Why do you need to see it? It's happening in different things, but I guess searching for that perfect model is going to prohibit the framework that you need. Like, we have everything we need. IDEA has been in law for almost 50 years. We don't need to see it. We just need to understand what it captures. And IDEA in its essence captures to make everybody, and it aligns with our mission statement, college career, like the most independence possible within their abilities. So what that looks like is somebody who's meaningfully educated, and all parents have the same dreams. We want our kids to go into the world and go to college and volunteer and live independently and have girlfriends and make mistakes. We want the same thing everybody else does. So to go search for a model so you know how to do it, for me, is not necessarily necessary.
That was very poignant, and I'll do mine now, which is We did it with my son, first time at Galindo Elementary. They've never included a child with intellectual disabilities. I agree with what Lisa's saying. This looks like best practices. It looks like what you said. It looks like best practices for dual language. It's rich curriculum. We're not pulling kids for interventions. We're teaching everybody and figuring out how they learn. We need to build the plane as we fly it. We just do. The federal law requires it, and our children deserve it, and it's a benefit to all the students in the room. So we start the training, we do the work, but we have a vision and we move. And so I think that's exactly right.
And
Yeah, we can
I'm
find
happy
examples,
to
and
be
we
a
will.
resource.
But, okay, Christina.
Well, I'm gonna do a shout out to the very dedicated staff of special education, and a lot of people are gone.
Yes.
They just aren't there anymore. So I really liked your answer on staffing, and it starts with leadership. But I haven't had the same leader, and I've been here, and I've had over 5 different leaders. I've been in different departments. I'm still in SPED, and I've only been in the district for 4 years. And there was like almost a year where I didn't even have an actual supervisor.
Right.
So when we're talking about failure and leadership and this and that, a lot of the people who kind of set some stuff up are long gone, and we didn't retain, and we didn't get people back. But honestly, all summer was just hirings. Like that's all that was happening. And of course, special education, where it's so much more difficult, it's going to be so much harder. So I just want to say, whenever we have these trainings, we have to include leadership, and we have to include the teachers, because they are the ones. And I've never seen, I mean, I say this every year, I've never seen such, commitment, and yet at the same time, there's such burnout together. Like everyone's just trying to we thought we just had to pull ourselves through May, and now we're like, can we get to December? People are seriously not sure they can do this, because they've got SOLs, and at the same time they've got ARDs, and they've got 4-hour ARDs, and they've got 6 kids to see, and or 20 kids in a class. Like it's just 35 kids in a class. Or PE now, like there's just so many things all at once. So we really need to give some more love to the SPED department, the people that are still here fighting to keep it. And yes, there needs to be some change for sure. No doubt, we hear you. But don't forget, a lot of the people that are gone that, maybe didn't serve us well. And some were great, some were great.
Dennis.
A couple of thoughts. I would like for us to look more closely and dig in a little bit more deeply into the special education programs or placements, as we call them. SBS, scores, life skills, PPCD, I'm sorry, I never remember what you asked. The units. So from my experience as a parent, no one can seem to really define what the programs are. There's no consistency from school to school. My son's in the scores program, and my son just moved to a new campus and had a radically different and phenomenally good experience compared to his last campus. So there's lack of consistency, there's lack of definition, and what are the outcomes, and are these evidence-based? Because I tend to think they're not. So that's one thing I'd love for us to look at. And then secondly, I've heard a number of mentions of attorneys. I'll just try to keep this top line. I will say from a parent's perspective, there've been some unethical and illegal behaviors taken against parents as retribution. Anyone who tries to push the envelope and exercise their rights as a parent. I won't get into the details, but some pretty awful things. And I'm pretty sure I'm not a unicorn in this room. And I think a number of parents have experienced it. And I have to tell you, it kind of kills me to think that my tax dollars are paying attorneys that are fighting me and doing a disservice to my child. And I would hope that the child experts and the education experts are running the show, but I have to tell you that I think the attorneys are oftentimes calling the shots, and it's so wrong. It's so wrong. And I wish you guys would look at that more closely. We've got some horror stories, and
Sure.
I guess going to what Candace said about getting the word out, that's kind of like my push at my campuses right now for my the other SPED parents, because I mean, I'm sending them all the information on VELA. It took me days to find the person at AISD who is our parent support person, and another month for her to reply to my email. And so, and my whole thing is I know what I'm doing and I know how to fight, but I need these other parents to have a connection and to how do I give them your number, you know? And I feel like that we had a program for a
When Kathy
while when
Paloma
Kathy
was here.
Paloma was here, and that ran really well. She helped me so much with advocacy. And we had a parent ambassador program that needs to come back, because that's who we need to go to on our campuses. It's another parent who has the knowledge. And because we, you know, when we talk, I mean, I love my special ed teachers, but you know, their kind of job is to not give me information. I mean, you know, I mean, they've been told, so I need a parent, you know, we need parents to help.
Like a paid, like a staff
Yeah, we're
person,
done.
or
We're
just
done.
a designated parent?
Designated parent.
Somebody start sweeping under your.
Yeah.
You know,
Part of
that's
our Sundays requires parent engagement.
So
Go ahead.
It's not a passive.
So thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for your curiosity and willingness to make special ed the priority that it deserves to be. We are going to relentlessly continue to advocate, and we know that you will as well. So we'll follow up with answers to some more of the questions, and are all available to help you and guide you as you make this as much of a priority as it needs to be. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
put away his chairs and quick clean up if you can. Everybody try to help.
Where did this table come from, Deb? I'm gonna drag it back. Oh, were they?
Christina, I love you.
Whoever just comments back in,
You can.
Yeah. Bye, Deb.
Bye.
Bye. We'll see you. Take care. Bye. We'll see you.